Actually, it's good because the first thing I want to talk about is a little bit about me. So the guys who come late can miss that. That's fine. I just want to tell you a little about who I am. My name is Robbie Ingebretson. Oh, I've got the wrong presentation up here. Okay. One second. Okay. Yeah, my name's Robbie. Sorry, I told you. My name is Robbie Ingebretson. I'm on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter. My last name is Ingebretson, and that's the lucky thing about having a crazy last name is there is not a lot of competition for it on Twitter. So at least if you're there early. So that's my Twitter handle. I also blog, and this is my blog, and it's nerdplusart.com. And by the way, everything that I talk about today will end up there. So if you follow my blog, you'll be able to find slides or whatever I share with you today. And then I'll put a redirect. So if you go to nerdplusart/MIX10, that'll take you to the right place. So I work for a little company called Pixel Lab. And when I say little, I mean actually very, very little, because Pixel Lab, up to this point, has been a company of just me. So Pixel Lab is very, very small. Our world headquarters are based in my backyard, actually. In a little office that we created. And so when we say that, I am Pixel Lab, actually, and there's a lot of good about being a one-man shop. It's been really fun. I've been a one-man company for about a year and a half. But there are times when being a one-man shop is not as fun. And some of the problems with being a one-man shop are that you end up taking on work by yourself. It's kind of lonely. You don't have people to share your thoughts with, bounce ideas off of. So I'm excited, actually, to mention today that Pixel Lab has just doubled in size right before your eyes. And Pixel Lab is now a company of 2. So massive growth this year of 100%. And in fact, the other half of Pixel Lab is sitting here. Kevin is here. Hi, Kevin. And thanks. And the reason I want to share that with you is we're also really interested in finding opportunities to work with you. So if there are people here who would like a chance to work on interesting projects, have some awesome WPF or Silverlight skills with a Z, then we would love to know about you. So definitely get in touch. At Pixel Lab, we make very cool stuff, and we make it all out of pixels, right? That's the name. And maybe you've seen Kevin Button. Does anybody know that joke? That was an inside joke. Well, Google Kevin Button, and then you can laugh at Kevin and I. So yeah, check out thinkpixellab.com, and that will be us. Okay, well, let's jump into the rest of the presentation. So I'm going to be very candid with you today. I think design is kind of hard, and I love it. I think design can change the world. I'm passionate about design, but especially when you're first trying to become a designer or approaching design, design is not easy. And I think even as you become fairly expert, design continues to be fairly hard. So that's why today I have given this presentation the name 10 Ways. Oh, cue the sound guy. Here, we'll go back. Okay, there we go. Yes. Okay, 10 ways that you can attack. Oh, come on, what's going on? Well, a design problem and win. There we go. So, didn't quite have the impact that I was hoping, but nevertheless, hopefully it felt impactful to you because it's something I'm really passionate about. I think that design is something that anybody can learn how to do. I really believe that, and I'm a good example of that. My background is that I spent about a year studying design when I was in school, and then I quickly moved over and I have a computer science degree. Then I went and I worked at Microsoft for a little while, and while I was at Microsoft, I realized that as much as I loved what I was doing with my computer science degree, I sort of felt lopsided personally, right? Like in my life, I'd been doing a lot of design, and I missed it. And so I started looking for opportunities to do more and more design. Now, I'll be honest with you, though, after a year of design school, I was not an awesome designer. Especially because my design school, I'm not that old, by the way. I guess I'm 35. But my design school training didn't really even involve computers. So that's kind of how much the industry has changed in a short amount of time. So by the time that I decided that I wanted to be doing more design, This is me, again, being very candid with you. I was sort of starting from scratch, and I was learning a lot. And so the talk that I wanted to give today is the talk that I wish that I could give younger me, right? If I could go back 7 or 8 years when I was looking at how design works and beginning to think deeply about design, these are the things that I wish I could tell that younger version of me, which I'll introduce you to right now. There I am. So the reason I will show you that is I want you to see my awesome Photoshop skills. That is not me, by the way. But I wish it were, because that guy is cool. So we're going to talk about, and I would do some karate moves for you, except I'd be embarrassed. But we're going to talk about 10 awesome attack moves on design. And we'll talk about those in the context of 3 apps, kind of 2.5. One of them only gets a little bit of coverage near the end. So the first of those apps is an app called Books.show. And by the way, none of these apps are apps that you've seen before. We will talk about CSMIC, and you saw that just briefly. Well, actually, I guess some of the design stuff we'll talk about with CSMIC happened in the first version of CSMIC. So for Windows, the one that we talked about at the PDC. The 2 other apps that we're going to talk about are apps that you haven't seen before. And one of them is Books.show, and this is an application that I did with Microsoft for the Windows 7 developer program. And this is an application that will be available to you to download for free as source code, as well as just as a fun app to have. And it'll be available, I think, within the next couple of weeks. It was actually, we were hoping to have it available now, and I think it's done. I think that just in the craziness of MIX, we didn't actually get it pushed out. But it's coming up. So let me just show you that app really quickly. And you know what? I have to admit that I just thought of something sort of bad about this, which is that this application runs great at 1024 by 768, but I have only run it at 1024 by... I always tilt it, right? Like I've been tilting it the whole time. It didn't occur to me until just now that you can't really tilt the presentation screen, right? So it's going to feel a little compressed, but that's okay. So let me drag this app over so you can see it. Okay, here we go. So, that's not too bad, actually. We can deal with that. So this is an application called Books.show. Really cool application, and I was very, very excited to be part of it. Reading, as you know, is something that we're all very excited about right now. Reading on devices. I just bought a Kindle. I can't put it down. This is an application that we built in WPF using technology like Flow Document and stuff like that to take books from the Gutenberg project and allow you to read them on your PC for free, right? So this is an application that you can download. You've got source. So I'll just kind of give you a tour really quickly. So this is what we call the library, and you have all the books in here, and you can kind of sort through those. You can also filter through those. So we could say, I guess look at authors, for instance. Charles Dickens is a guy who I know has some books in here. You can then choose a book. Here, let's go back to the top. Here's Pride and Prejudice. So you can choose a book, you bring it in here, it's feeling kind of compressed right now. It shows you what page I was last reading, right? And you can see I've got a bookmark here. I've also added a highlight. You can obviously, navigate between pages. We have kind of this fun visualization as you're scrubbing through to see where you've landed. Anyway, it's a small app. It's not a big app, and that was kind of by design, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But I want to tell you a little bit about the process that we went through for when we were creating this. And I'll show you some more examples of it in just a second. Okay, so first thing I want to talk about, design attack move number 1, and that is find inspiration. So I'll tell you a story. So something you might not know about me, actually very, very few people know about me, including my wife, I don't think even knows this about me, is I know karate. I know karate because I studied under a guy. He was probably the best sensei at our community center. And I studied under him for 8 weeks on Saturdays when I was 7. And the main thing that I took away from that experience is that you should only attack somebody in self-defense, and that the attack needs to come from within. So that's how we're going to approach design inspiration. This is a very internal thing for you. So the first thing that you need to do to prepare yourself to be a great designer is you need to be inspired. You need to find inspiration. So I'll tell you a story about this for me. When I was working at Microsoft still, I went to a really cool conference called Flash in the Can. Has anybody been to that conference? A couple of people maybe? It's awesome. And not a Microsoft conference, but an awesome conference nonetheless. And I would definitely recommend going there if you want to be inspired. But I came back from that conference, and I remember I had this moment. I was sitting on the plane, and I came back like just with this passion and like this feeling about what I had seen there. And it was maybe one of the first big exposures that I'd had to kind of what was going on with digital design. And I was sitting on the plane, and I wanted to make something. Like I just had this like creative energy. And so I started writing down ideas. And I spent a long time on the plane like coming up with these ideas. And at the end of it, I started thumbing through these pages, and I looked at the number of ideas that I had come up with, and I couldn't believe it. I thought, and the thought that I had is, wow, like look how much my thinking has expanded by being exposed to that stuff, right? So this is the moment that you're looking for when you're trying to look for inspiration. Is this moment where you feel kind of this passion and you feel this thing that's happening inside of you. And this is a thing I've always believed in, but I came across this quote the other day from a guy called Frank Chimero, who is an awesome illustrator. Do you guys know him? I heard a clap. He's awesome. Frank Chimero is, look him up because he's awesome. I've said that 4 times, but it's true. He said this: passion is the currency of creativity. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. This is something I believe deeply. If you want to be a great designer, you need to live like a designer. And what that means is you need to be looking for things. You need to consume the world, right? You need to attack the world and look at everything that you see from a design perspective. Think about the decisions that people are making and why they're making them. Honestly, I don't think there's a replacement for that when you're looking for inspiration. That said, there are lots of places that you can go to find it. And to be honest with you, this is just a partial list. I mean, these are just, what I did is I went through a file that I had where I keep all the projects that I've worked on, basically my project archive. And I looked, and I just came up with thoughts about where I'd found inspiration for the different projects. And this is the list that I came up with. One of the interesting ones, inspiration file. I keep a thing called my inspiration file, or a morgue file is what a lot of designers call it. It's basically just a place where if you see something cool, you drop it in there, right? I've got like 4,000 images or something in there. The other one is objects and textures in my bottom drawer. There's this drawer in our bedroom where we kind of put everything. And it's like, we call it the junk drawer, and you just drop stuff in there. So it's got like baseball cards and bouncy balls, and I've got 3 kids, so all kinds of weird stuff that they find or remove from the drawer, from the junk drawer. I go in there and I start playing with things. That's a great place to go to find inspiration. But the point, I guess, of this is that you're going to begin to find inspiration all around you, and that will make you a great designer. So when we were designing the book project, the first thing that I did is I began thumbing through this file that I had, as well as like going out to the internet looking for things that felt like reading to me, right? Felt like the kind of book reader that I wanted to create. I came up with a couple of pages of this. I just chose 2. I chose these 2, though, because these have elements that actually made their way into the design. So you can see like the shelf of books ended up becoming the shelf of books that we use in the library. The colors we took from the Penguin book that you can see there. Here's another one. It's got another Penguin book. For a long time, when I first started the designs on this, it was all blue. And I'd gotten that from this awesome book called How to Be a Graphic Designer Without Losing Your Soul. Also, there's that page turn. That was the source of inspiration for that little bookmark thing that we end up having. So this is a document that a lot of designers call, this is a very loose interpretation of this, but a mood board. The idea is that you begin to compile scraps, basically, things that create the mood for the thing that you're trying to build, right? This is a really, really great way, I think, to formalize your inspirational thinking, so to speak. Okay. Design attack move number 2 is identify the theme. So here, you know what I'm going to do? I wonder if I can scoot this over at all. I feel like I'm wandering back and forth there. Okay. So, if you've seen the workshop that I gave, or if you saw it yesterday, this will be a repeat for you. But I think it's the best way to explain what a theme is. So there's this book called On the Road by Jack Kerouac. I'm sure that many, many of you have read it. I read this book when I was 13, so you'll forgive me if I'm taking a little license in my description of the book. But as I remember the book, it didn't have a really strong plot, right? It felt like a whole bunch of vignettes that kind of wandered around. And those vignettes are wonderful, though, right? I actually loved this book when I read it. It was probably I think I read it in, I was older, I was probably like 17. I read it in AP English. And it was my favorite book that I read that year. That's what I was going to tell you. And but the thing that's interesting about it is that it doesn't have a strong plot. The thing that you take away from that book is not a plot, it's not necessarily a story, it's a feeling, right? It's a bunch of vignettes, and you remember little details, but now, it's, 17 years later, half of my life later, and the thing that I remember about the book is the feeling. I remember this feeling of reckless abandon, right? This feeling that you can go out and conquer the world. And that is a great example of a theme. So theme, a lot of times we use the word theme to mean something very different. A lot of times we use the word theme to mean the look and feel of the controls in your application, right? We say we've themed an application. I'm actually talking about something very, very different here. When I talk about a theme for an application, the thing that I'm trying to describe is this. It's a recurrent concept, and this is maybe the key word, essential, or an essential idea that unifies a design, right? So I'll give you a sec to take that in. So this is the theme is something that is essential. It's the thing that you do not want people to forget. Everybody who interacts with this design that you're creating, whether it's an application or a website or graphic design or whatever, you want them to come away with this thing, the theme. And the more powerful the theme is, the more unified your design will be. And unity is a strong goal that we have as designers, right? When you unify something, it means that you've done a great job managing those relationships between the elements of the design. And the strength in doing that is that people begin to comprehend the intentions of the design, right? So if you can unify a design, you're going to make a stronger design. Now, the thing that is a little bit difficult about a theme is themes make a lot of sense if you're building, I don't know, like it's easy for like websites or for like, there's certain things that lend themselves really, really well to a theme because it's got a clear message and you understand what it's trying to do. Books have great themes. Things that tend to tell stories tend to have really strong and good themes. But there's a lot of applications where it's hard to figure out what your theme is, right? And so I wanted to play a little game with you today. This is called Find That Theme, and it is a game of finding things that should be easy to find. So that sounds like it would be very straightforward. And I think you guys will be very good at it, except for the fact that sometimes it's kind of hard to identify a theme. And we're going to take some examples that I think are actually sort of tough. Now, exciting news for you. This game has been sponsored by Kazaml. And our sponsor has graciously given us prizes. Now, some of you may remember that last year I attempted to partner with Coca-Cola, and we came up with the Kazaml branded Coke, right? Now, I'm sad to tell you that this is the last Kazaml branded Coke. Coke didn't get back to me on the partnership. Not heard back from my contact there. His name is Info. So still waiting for a return on that email. This is the last one. So there's one Kazaml branded Coke left. Somebody will be the proud owner of the Kazaml branded Coke. But I have good news, which is that we've got a contingency plan. So somebody told me that it might not be a good idea to continue to promote Kazaml by sticking stickers on the Coca-Cola can and calling it a Kazaml branded Coke. So I've got a new strategy, one that I think actually is good for Coke and still good for Kazaml. And that is the Coke-branded Kazaml sticker. So if anybody's interested in getting a Coke-branded Kazaml sticker, those will also be prizes. So I don't see how they can be upset. I'm promoting their brand through the Kazaml sticker. So, okay. So winners of this, and the way you win this, by the way, is you think the same thing that I thought. So I'm going to give you an application. And if you can tell me what I thought, then you're right. How's that? I'm the one with the mic, though, so that's how it works. Okay. Office toolbar. Who thinks they can identify the theme of the Office toolbar? What was that? Desperation. If nobody has a better answer, I'll give you that one because it's pretty close to what I came up with, actually. Anybody else want to try to make that more concrete? No, that's less concrete. So we're going to call the theme of Office toolbar helps you find features you didn't know were there. Now, think about that. Anybody who interacts or has heard anything about the Office toolbar, or anybody who tried to create the Office toolbar, you know there was a big design process that went into that. That was their goal, right? And I think they didn't lose sight of it. That was the thing that they wanted to accomplish. So I would call that the theme. It's the essential bit of information. It was the thing that was being conveyed as they were going through that process. I couldn't see you because there's lights in my face. So I'll tell you, I'm just going to put these right here. And winners can claim them afterward, unless you're really thirsty, in which case you can come up. But let me warn you, they are warm. So.
There's a further to their goal, and then it has features that you once knew were there.
I think that's he said that there's a corollary to their goal, which is that it hides features you once knew were there. I think that's a byproduct, and we won't get into that, but I think most people benefit from that design. Okay, Windows 7. Anybody want to take a stab at the theme of Windows 7? Kevin wins. No wonder we work together. Not Windows Vista. Yeah. Okay. Well, your Kazama branded Coke is waiting for you. Last but not least, I didn't put up there. Last but not least, the theme for Kazama. It's not on there. But you'll just have to trust me that I know what I would think. So, not XAMLpad. Well, that's true. I guess the theme of defining yourself relative to another app is not a bad strategy, by the way. But was not it. It's not a bad one. I'll tell you what it is. Notepad for XAML is how I always think of it. I always think it's got to be lightweight and as easy to use as Notepad, right? You open it up like Notepad. So I will keep this one. And actually, I'm going to keep this one because it's the original. So actually, I just made that up. I have no idea. Okay. So back to books.show. Let me show you the manifestation of the theme in that. So with books.show, we actually had a pretty strong theme. The theme for books.show is, as you might have guessed, reading, right? So that was the thing that I cared most about, is nailing the reading experience. So to nail the reading experience, I did a couple things. One is I literally downloaded every single reader I could come up with, and I tried to codify the way people are used to interacting with readers, right? So I bought a Kindle, which was a sacrifice, but fortunately Pixel Lab expensed that for me, so that worked out. And I downloaded like 9 applications for my phone, and I found like 4 applications on the PC. I played with all of them. Because what I realized is that I didn't want this to just be about reading, but I wanted it to be about great reading, about like an awesome reading experience. I wanted the thing that everybody came away with, thinking like, I can read this book. I can read a book on my computer. And in fact, that was my goal. I used to sit in the office with the guy, my sponsor at Windows, or at Microsoft on this, and I used to tell him that I will be done with this project as soon as I've read a book on it, right? So that was the goal, is that I can actually read a book. And that's the intention this week, by the way, now that things have calmed down a little bit. Let's see. Another thing, though, that a theme can do, a lot of times, is it can help you identify a visual style. So far what we've talked a lot about are like kind of functional themes, but also a theme can bleed over and it can become part of a visual style, right? You can have a visual theme to something. And in this one, I kind of had 2. For this page in particular, the theme was paper, right? And I thought, like, if you're reading, you should feel like you're interacting with paper. So we've got the paper drop shadow. In fact, I fought this. They didn't want to have the paper boundaries in the application, but I wanted it. I wanted it to feel like you were looking at paper, right? I thought the only way that I could do that. Normally, by the way, you don't have a column. It's just because of the small screen. But I thought the only way that I could do that would be to actually give boundaries to the page, right? Another thing is, if you look at the menus that we created, they all kind of have this paper feeling to them. So actually, let me show you a better one. So this is the configuration dialog, and I moved away from traditional style controls on this, and instead I went toward controls that feel like they could have come off a printing press. That was my goal, to make them look like they were printable. Those colors probably wouldn't work, by the way. I don't think you can print that orange on black. But another one is here. You can see, kind of the paper theme. But something to notice is this drop shadow. So I created these drop shadows that have this kind of angle to them. And the idea then is it felt a little bit more physical. It felt like paper that was being lifted off of the page. We get the same thing down here on the scrubber. We've got sort of that same paper theme. Then the other visual theme that was in here was this idea of a library. And initially what I really wanted was to do something like kind of what the iPad is doing for their library. I wanted a whole bunch of covers. We didn't have covers. And so instead I opted for this idea of a library where you're looking at it as though it were the library in your house. And we actually dynamically generate those books. So there's like a dozen different book covers in there. And then I dynamically go through and I generate the text, and we do this little weird algorithm to find out what will fit on each of the different books. So anyway. that is the manifestation of that theme in there. And so just to summarize what I was saying there, if you have a theme, it's going to benefit your design in two ways. First of all, it makes sure that you deliver a product that everybody understands, right? It unifies the design that way. And then the second thing, and I mean that at a functional level, the other thing that it does is it can unify it at a visual level. And honestly, you guys, if you don't have a theme, design is really, really hard. As soon as you understand your theme, the decisions become easier. Because really, design is a lot of that. It's weighing different options, right? So it's a whole bunch of different trade-offs between different constraints. And those are easy to make if you understand what your theme is. If you don't, those can be hard. Okay, you guys ready for the next one? So, design, attack, move. Number 3 is this. Be good first, and be new second. Be good before you're new. So this was a fear that we had with the book application, which was there are so many book readers. And to be honest with you, this was a very, very small project, right? So, it's not like we had the budget of Amazon Kindle or, something like that. It was very, very, very small, and it was essentially a one-man job. I actually got some great help from my friends at D2B and then another consulting agency that's based out of Israel. But by and large, this was kind of on me, so it was small. And my fear was that we were going to create something that kind of just came and went and that nobody cared about, right? That it was just another sample application and that we were done with. At the very least, I wanted to feel like I was proud of it and that I'd made my mark personally, something that I cared about. So here is the philosophy that I adopted and continue to adopt in that scenario, which is being different is good, kind of, right? Like setting you apart by being different is not a bad way to set yourself apart, but it's only kind of good. The way that you really want to differentiate yourself is by being good, by being the best, right? And if you think about this, this is something we run into all the time. I'll tell you a really quick story. Last year for MIX10, I had a cool opportunity. So this would have been 2 summers ago, summer before last. They were getting ready for MIX10 and starting to think about the marketing and stuff like that. And I had a friend who worked for the marketing agency that was doing helping Microsoft out, consulting with them, figuring out the best way to kind of think about the conference. So I got to be an expert, witness, not a witness, I don't know what it would be, but an expert dude, and talking to them about what MIX means to me and stuff like that. So they wanted to run by some of the marketing to me, and they had these 3 words, and I only remember 2 of them. One of them was inspire. You might remember them. Maybe they use them. One of them was inspire, another was innovate, and I don't remember the third one. Does anybody remember? When they told me those words, I loved the first word. I thought inspire is what you want to do. Like people should come away from that conference inspired. Innovate just rubbed me the wrong way, and I learned something about myself that day. And I thought, why would I not like that word? What is wrong with the word innovate? And I think it kind of has something to do with this. We tend to have this massive emphasis on this idea of being new, of creating something new, and differentiating ourselves by being new. But if you can differentiate yourself by being good, people will just assume you're new. And an example of that you're innovative. And if you look at every innovative thing that you can think of, you'll find that that's the case. Maybe the most classic innovation that we all talk about is the iPod, right? We all talk about how Apple revolutionized the way we listen to music. And I think that it's fair to say that they did. But they didn't really do it by being innovative. They did it by being awesome, by being the best. I don't know exactly. The iPod came out, I think, in 2001. I've had my first MP3 player in, I think, 1998. It was a Rio. Do you guys remember the Rio? That came out like 3 years before the iPod. But nobody remembers the Rio. Everybody and more importantly, nobody has a Rio, right? Everybody in this room probably has an iPod, or I'd say probably 80% of us do. So good is the most impactful differentiator. It's the thing to care most about. So I'll just tell you a quick story about this and how it impacted the application, because we need to get through some of these other ones. With this application, the thing about good is a lot of times it means that you have to make some trade-offs. And the biggest thing that I think that you can do if you want to focus on being good is focus on being less. And we knew that we had a very small budget for this project, and so my focus was to have a minimal feature set. The minimal feature set that we needed to have in order to feel like it was a useful application. Because I knew that if we could shrink that feature set, then we could make those features awesome. So, and in the end, I would say that, this is just an interesting aside, I would say that 25% of my dev time was spent on perf, right? That's another thing that is good to spend time on. So look at this, animation. Now this is running on my little tablet PC, not hardware accelerated, and yet I'm getting this kind of animation, right? Off of that. That actually took a fair amount of work because there's drop shadows going on there, there's all kinds of there's that reflection that you have down here, there's all kinds of craziness going on there. An uncompromising commitment to quality is the thing that will differentiate your application and your design. Okay, a little bit more. Oh, I got to close this out. Actually, I think we've got one more. Okay. One other kind of side note to this idea, when you sit down with a design, a lot of times the temptation is to try to create something that nobody's ever seen before, especially because we're technologists, right? And we kind of have this premium on the new. So we have this idea that the thing we want to do is create something different, something that nobody's ever seen before. But the thing to remember that as a designer is that a lot of times the best thing you can do is you can capture and synthesize thinking that other people have done. And that thinking might come from your client, and it also might come from the world around you. And I think it's some version of this is what Pablo Picasso meant when he said this crazy thing. He said, good artists borrow, but great artists steal. And I love that quote. And sorry, guys, this is a repeat for some of you too, but it's just too good to not repeat. And it's this great quote by Jim Jarmusch, and we won't read it all, but I do want you to notice this. He says, nothing is original. Steal from anywhere that resonates with inspiration or fuels your imagination. And then come down near the bottom where it says authenticity. Authenticity is invaluable. Originality is non-existent. So his point is that the act of stealing is the act of taking something and making it your own. And I think it comes back to that idea of inspiration that we talked about earlier. As you consume the world and as you make it your own, right, it's okay. What you're doing is okay. That's appropriate because that's what design is. Design is consuming the world and then giving it back to people in a way that's easier to understand and more applicable to the thing that you're doing. And then he says, and don't bother concealing your thievery. Celebrate it as if you feel like it. Or celebrate as you feel like it. In other words, there's nothing wrong with that. Tell people if you're borrowing their ideas, or I should say stealing their ideas, using their ideas. Okay. So design attack number 4 has to do with sketching. So we talked a lot about sketching last year. We talked a little bit about it this year with SketchFlow. There's a whole bunch of really great tools that people are using to move this idea of sketching forward. So I'll tell you how sketching has changed for me since last year. A year ago, I didn't really use the word sketch. I used the word wireframe. And I liked that word. And I would produce these documents that were kind of describing the information architecture of whatever it was that I was producing. I've abandoned that practice this year, and I've moved to sketching. And I would say that the difference between sketching and wireframing is mostly one of speed. And that's benefit number 1, by the way, of sketching. Sketching is almost as fast as you. And what I mean by that is you are a smart person, and you've got ideas coming to you all the time, right? And there's not a lot that you can do to capture those ideas that is going to facilitate, getting those ideas out better than sketching them. And so sketch with whatever tool you have. I keep graph paper right by my computer, and I sketch on graph paper all the time. I also like to use a tool called Balsamiq. I like to use SketchFlow. Also, Kevin and I are super interested in this idea of sketching. So we're thinking about what we can do maybe in the tool space there. So keep an eye out for that. That's really important, though, because the creative process that you go through has these 2 components to it. And this happens largely like at a large scale in a project where you have this diverging thought, right? And the creative thought is by its very nature, it is divergent. And what I mean by that is it's going off in all kinds of random directions. The nice thing, or the thing that makes that kind of thinking difficult, though, is the fact that there's really not, if you're just thinking, if you're just going off in all kinds of places, there's really not a good record of it. And so one of the main reasons that you want to focus on sketching and getting those ideas out quickly and succinctly is so that you can capture those ideas. Because then eventually that creative process is going to be convergent again. And what I mean by that is you've got to go through and figure out which of those ideas were good and why they make sense and rationalize them relative to one another. And if you have 20 sketches or 30 sketches, a large volume of ideas to go through, then you're more likely to pick the good ones, right? The other thing is, and this isn't in the slide, so I just thought of it, sketching facilitates communications with partners or with the people that you work with. I already mentioned this, that sketching allows you to produce a large volume of ideas, a mountain of ideas, as it were, right? And then last of all, the thing about sketching is that a lot of times when you're beginning to tackle a new process or a new project or a new concept, a new design, it's complex. And one thing that I've noticed, for me personally as well as other designers, and I think this is a sign of like a beginning designer, is that you tend to shy away from complexity. And we tend to do this sometimes under the umbrella of simplification, right? But it's wrong. Because if you really want to simplify something, you have to start with the complex and then make it simple. Otherwise, you're not, that's a uninteresting effort in reduction, right? So when you sketch, you can gain familiarity quickly and tackle complexity. Oh, I guess I do have this in there. Good. I just added this. So now we're going to transition to new applications. So this is Seismic. So I had a really cool opportunity over the last couple of months, which was to work with Seismic. I'm sure you guys saw Seismic in the keynote today. We were also in the keynote at the PDC. Seismic's done this really awesome thing where they've taken this big dependency on Microsoft technologies because they've seen the speed and the quality of the kind of products that we can produce with those technologies. They wanted to have somebody who was really familiar with those technologies, though. So they've been working with me and some other groups to kind of jumpstart that process for them. So I had this great privilege of working with Seismic. And one of the coolest things, or one of the most, I guess, interesting things that I learned in this project is the power of sketching in terms of facilitating communication between you and a client. Typically, when I've worked with somebody with sketches with a client, I'm the one providing the sketches. The thing that I realized on this project, though, is that a really great thing that you can do is you can ask your client or ask your audience to produce the sketches for you. And that gives them the ability to take their best ideas and get them on paper in a way that they can communicate them to you. So these are sketches that one of my leads there, my contacts there named Marco, produced for us. And these are for the account management screen. So this is how you add different accounts. And we had some interesting problems here, or interesting challenges, I should say here, because of the fact that we were supporting this plug-in infrastructure. So we didn't know exactly what the constraints of this design were. They'd done a lot of thinking about this. They'd gone through all, brainstorming meetings and all this stuff, and I wanted to benefit from that. And so Marco produced these sketches for me, and in the end, those sketches became this design. So this is the comp, and it's very, very close to what's actually in the application for the Seismic application account management UI. And that was really rewarding. So something I'd encourage you to do is sketch, and then also ask the people that you're working for to sketch for you. Give you their best ideas. It's a really great way to get your thinking on paper. Okay. The next technique, the next attack move that we're going to use is learn technique. So if you want to be a designer, well, actually, let's start with this quote. So do you guys know who Saul Bass is? I am talking about Saul Bass all the time these days, so sorry for the repeat. But Saul Bass is this awesome designer from the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s. He did like the Vertigo poster that I'm sure you guys know. He did all the opening sequences for many, many of the Alfred Hitchcock films. By the way, look up Saul Bass versus Star Wars on YouTube. It's super funny. It's the Star Wars credits reinterpreted by Saul Bass. I wanted to show that, but I couldn't figure out how to fit it in. Anyway, this is a great quote from him. He says, "Every design problem has a craft basis. If I had not myself fooled with cut paper, I would not have gotten the symbol." And he said that about this design. This is the movie poster that he did. And this is, I guess, is that German maybe? I did just notice that now. This is I think it's The Man with the Golden Arm. Is the name of this poster, or the name of this film. So you can see what he's talking about, right? He said he'd been fooling around with cut paper, and he ended up producing this. I think that's really cool because, obviously our technique has changed a lot. Like, most of you probably will not need to cut out paper, although a friend of mine just told me the other day that he'd been cutting out things for a project, so maybe there's more of that than we know. But technique, nevertheless, plays a very important part. And this, to be honest with you, is part of the big hike up if you're trying to become a designer, is it takes a little while to pick up some techniques. But I thought I would jumpstart that process for you today by showing you 3 techniques that anybody can master very quickly. And these are cool, by the way. I picked 3 things that I notice myself doing a lot when I'm doing a design, and they're kind of fun little things that anybody can do. So 2 of these are Photoshop techniques. One of them is a XAML technique. So I'll just show you how this works really fast. Okay, I'm going to have to drag some things over onto the other screen. Oh, that's PowerPoint. Here we go. Okay, so first thing that I want to show you is how to work with gradients. So we'll just create a new canvas here. Now I know you guys are not Photoshop people, and I'm anticipating that, so I'm going to show you what I'm doing. So I'm creating a new canvas. We'll make sure that this is, okay, we're zoomed in at 100% on here. So I wanted to show you an interesting technique with gradients. If you ever noticed, it's hard to make a nice looking gradient, right? You choose 3 or 4, maybe just 2 colors. Choosing that gradient can be difficult, getting the colors right. So I want to show you a shortcut for doing that very quickly and easily. Is this showing up for you? Okay, good. So, man, I'm sorry. I can barely find my mouse here. There we go. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to do is turn auto select on and say we just want to select that layer. So now I've selected this object. Photoshop keeps things in vector form for you until you ask it not to. So that's a vector. I can right click on this and go into what are called blending options. Blending options are just a way that you can apply effects like drop shadows and things like that to something. One of the things that you can do in here is this is how you create a gradient in Photoshop, or one of the common ways. So you can say create a gradient right here, and you can see now that it's created that gradient for me, right? That is all you need to, one other thing that you need to do. Click on right here, and have you guys heard of blend modes? Blend modes are this idea that you can say this is how one layer is going to interact with the other layer. Change the math. We have one blend mode in Silverlight and WPF, and that blend mode is an opacity blend mode. We just say that we'll modulate the opacity, combine those values that way. Photoshop and some other tools allow you to choose that. So I'm going to choose one right here. Let's choose linear burn. Now that is the magic step, by the way. You'll notice that gradient went away when I did that. And the reason for that is we had a gradient that goes from white to black. When you apply that gradient with a linear burn, you lose the regular opacity. It goes black. But I'll show you if we double click on this and change the color to something like this. Now, you'll notice that we're creating this really nice gradient on top of this. And you'll notice that now I'm only changing one color, and I'm able to get that very nice looking gradient. But the gradient is still just basically that one color to black, right? Although it's a lot more subtle, like it's different. It's different than the kind of gradient that you might just get otherwise. So now if we come back in here, I'll show you how these different blend modes work. I could choose multiply. That's kind of your more traditional, one. A really cool one, though, is this, color burn. And if I scale this down a little bit, you'll see that it's actually, instead of going to black, it's going to kind of a darker green. And they have formulated these gradients in such a way that they tend to produce very natural-looking colors and light combinations, okay? So that's the first thing. If you want to choose colors for a gradient, it's cool, too, because now I can come back in here and I can very easily say we decide not to go with that aqua green. We want to go with like an orange. So now I go there, and now I've got this really cool-looking gradient, right? Very cool technique, something I do all the time. This is how, if I want to produce a nice looking gradient, this is what I do. Is that interesting to you guys? Yeah? I don't know. I'm like looking at some blank faces. I don't know if this is the right crowd for that. Yeah? Okay, I'll show you. The other ones are fast too. I'll show you the rest of these. Next one is I just wanted to show you three kinds of drop shadows. So drop shadows are a really powerful tool that you have in a design for creating layers. A lot of times we don't really know what to do with a drop shadow, and we don't know really how to interact with one. So I wanted to show you three styles of drop shadows that you can use and how to use them. Okay, so again, this is a blend mode. Now, this blend mode maps pretty well to the effects that we have in WPF and Silverlight, and we're kind of tweaking the same things. So we probably could even do this in blend, but since we're in Photoshop, we'll stick with it. So I'm choosing the drop shadow now, which you can see apply to drop shadow. I'll try to manage that a little bit. So I've got kind of the same tweaks that I have right here. So distance would be the same as shadow depth on the effect. So if you're setting the property on the effect in WPF or Silverlight, it's called shadow depth. And then size would be the same as blur radius. So the first drop shadow that you have is this one right here where I'm going to collapse the distance, right? And this is like a head-on drop shadow. And this is one that you can use to clarify lines. Now, it's actually having the opposite effect right here, because we don't really need to clarify those lines. We already had really great contrast between those two things. But if we were to make this a really light color, something like that, now you can see how that drop shadow is subtle, but it's allowing us to clarify the boundaries. Here, we've got to find the right one. And you'll have to tweak these, but you find the right one. And what we've done there is by dropping that distance all the way down to 0, we're saying this is right up against the thing where it's casting a shadow, right? So it casts it kind of evenly all the way around, and we're saying that the light source is head on. Okay, so another drop shadow that you might like is this one. This is the drop shadow. Here, let's do this. We can crank up the size, and then we move this drop shadow way over here, and then we pull down the opacity. And when we do that, we create something that feels like it is jumping out at you. It's popping out of the page. Okay, that's the second technique. And then the last drop shadow requires a little bit more work. And this is the drop shadow that I used in the books application. So let's clear that drop shadow that we had. We'll clear all the effects on it, actually. We're going to copy this element, and I'm just going to drag it over and copy it. Okay, and then we'll make this one that's behind be black. I'm going to apply the blur directly to this by choosing a filter, setting a blur. Oh, it's coming up over here. Okay. Oh, I didn't blur it enough, though. Let's do it again. Apply a blur to that one more time. We'll blur it up to about 4 or 5. Something like that. Okay, and then for this one, all we do is we scoot it back over there. Make sure I have my transform controls on this. And then I'm going to drag this guy and do this. Move him right under like that. I tweak him around so he's in the right place. This is the drop shadow that we used for books.show, and then we can tweak the opacity on that a little bit. This is something that feels a lot more natural. Feels like it's kind of coming off the page on that one side. Okay, we're done in Photoshop, guys. I hope that was interesting. I don't know. That was kind of a risk showing that one this crowd. I don't really know who's here. It's probably either designers who know that or developers who may not care. So kind of risky. Sorry. Okay, so those are 2 techniques. I'm going to move along. There was a 3rd technique that I was going to show you, but I'll tell you what, I'll blog about it. Okay, let's get back into the... Okay, real quickly though, I wanted to show you the application of those techniques, because I used every single one of those in this that we just saw in this application that I designed with Seismic. So the first of those, at the very top, you can see those two kind of softer bars at the top. Those both have a very subtle gradient on them that I produced using that technique that I showed you. The other thing I was going to show you is how to manipulate a border to kind of create a 3D border. That's this button down here. I'll blog about that. And then the last thing is that you can see the drop shadow has that very soft drop shadow that makes the dialogue feel like it's popping out at you. So just kind of an application of those techniques. If you want to be a good designer, one of the best things that you can do, I think, is find examples. There's a guy named, I don't know how to say it. It's Abuzito, I think. He's a blogger. He does an awesome job documenting all kinds of cool Photoshop techniques. There's lots of people that do that. Choose your tool. It doesn't have to be Photoshop, but choose a tool and begin to develop techniques. By the way, XAML's a great tool. I'm not just, or XAML or Blend or whatever, but you can do a lot of stuff in XAML. So it's worth knowing that tool as well. Okay, so your third design attack vector is sweat the small stuff. Sorry, I know that's not what you want to hear. I'm not asking you to be stressed about it. But it is important to pay attention to the little things. So I tried to make a list. Honestly, there's not a checklist for this, right? What you want to do is produce a design that feels like it has been manicured, like somebody paid attention. And I can't tell you the list. But I did give you a list of things that I would pay attention to. Maybe a start, like I just sat down and wrote down 15 or whatever things that I think are worth knowing about. So alignment, margins, padding, all that kind of stuff. An interesting one, crisp lines. That is a big one. Make sure, do whatever you can to keep your imagery or whatever it is aligned to pixel boundaries and keep those lines crisp. That'll make your design feel manicured. Another one is pay attention to copy and the text casing. Those are 2 other ones that people tend to miss a lot. I wanted to show you this. Seismic is a company that was very invested in this idea of keeping the design clean and manicured and having, paying attention to the small stuff. And I thought this was interesting. We generated, how many are there? 53 bugs. This was 53 bugs that we generated in a bug bash, a visual bug bash. Just trying, this was after we thought we were done, by the way. Just trying to get the visuals right on that application. Just trying to tweak things until it felt clean and it felt like the way we wanted it to feel. Okay, number 7. We're getting through these, guys. This is actually going pretty quick. I'm glad because I was worried on time. Number 7 is be bold. So this is a hard thing to do when you're a new designer because you don't have a lot of confidence yet as a designer. And it's hard. And it makes you feel kind of like you're exposing yourself, right? Like you're going out there. It's like wearing a big fancy dress to the prom or something like that. Like you feel like you're doing something feels not like you. Feels different. I've never done that, by the way. But I can imagine, right, that it would feel that way. I don't know why that came to mind. That's funny. So I'll show you an example of where I messed this up. This is the Seismic application. This was the first comp that I delivered when we were translating over to Silverlight. This is the first comp that I delivered to Seismic. And It's not bad. I think it's actually pretty nice. Basically, the direction they gave me was they wanted to carry forward as much of the WPF version of the application as they could. We had this big problem, though, which was that we didn't have glass anymore, right? Because there's no way to create the glass borders in Silverlight. And so I sent this to them, and everybody was kind of blah on it. And finally, Marco sat down with me, and he said, we need to make it a little bit more interesting. What can we do? And I said, well, I don't know. Like, I don't know. What can we? He said, can we do something in the background to make it feel more like glass? And I said, well, we could put like an aqua color there or something. It just didn't feel right. And he said, well, what if we let the user choose the background? And as soon as we did that, we got this. And all of a sudden, this application that had been very ho-hum became very, very alive. And color is a great way to be bold. It's a great way to stake your claim. So honestly, I wish that I could go back and tell younger me to be bolder. I kind of wish I could tell like living me, like me right now, to be more willing to be bold. The worst thing that can happen when you make a bold decision is that somebody asks you to tone it down. But generally, people respect that decision, has been my experience, and they might ask you to tone it down. But that's fine. Here's another example of the customizable background. This one's my favorite, by the way. I think that one's really cool. The last app I want to talk about is an application called todo.show. And when I started designing this application, I thought I was being very bold. I was pushing myself, and I thought, man, I am doing it. I'm the design man. I'm bold. Check it out. And I produced this, and I thought, look at all the pink. I'm so bold. It's not that this is boring, right? But this application is gray, and it's like all the other gray applications with a little bit of pink. Actually, let me see something. Okay. Yeah, with a little bit of pink. And so I'll tell you a story about this. I'm trying to remember the order of the story, but we were watching the Olympics. My wife and I were watching the Olympics, and I'd gotten some feedback on this, and I'll tell you more about that in just a minute. But I'd gotten some feedback on this design that something wasn't quite working. Somebody told me that it wasn't really doing it for them, and I couldn't believe it because it was the boldest thing I'd ever produced, I thought. And I saw this commercial, so I want to show you these two commercials while we were watching the Olympics.
Introducing the Accord Cross Tour with available four-wheel drive from Honda.
There's one more.
It fits without fitting in. Introducing the Accord Cross Tour from Honda.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to buy a Honda now, by the way. I saw those and I loved them, and I couldn't figure out what it was, but my poor wife had to watch them like 30 times with me. We just went back and back and back, and I don't think we actually saw the figure skating that night, unfortunately. So, did you guys see those commercials? Anybody see them? Were they impactful for you, too? They're cool, right? I mean, at the very least, they're cool. Like, you can't not notice them. The other one that's really funny is that Old Spice commercial that was on during the Olympics. Anyway. What's that? Oh, yeah. Kazama branded Hondas. Yeah, we'll produce that for you. Actually, you know what? You can brand your own Honda with a Kazama sticker. So just let me know if you want to do that. It'll be a Honda Accord branded Kazama sticker. So if anybody wants that. Okay, so, and this is kind of a segue into the next thing that I want to talk about, which is this. If you want to nail a design, you need to work really, really hard. It's going to be hard. Then you need to seek feedback, and then you have to go back and start all over. And that is exactly what I did with todo.show, which is this task management application that I was just showing you. So unfortunately, I can't actually show you the app. That one is still not quite ready for production. But I did think that you guys might find this kind of interesting. I use a Subversion server, and I check in all of my designs into Subversion. And so I can do this thing where I can go back and I can see like my thinking. It's really cool. It's a little tool called Pixel Story, I think, if you want to track that down. So this was the process for me designing the new version, the redesigned version after I saw that commercial. So I came back and I thought, I need more color, right? And I also thought maybe I should start using color in a way that makes a little bit more sense. So the first thing I did is I thought, well, what if I color code the text, right? And different colors could mean like the project that task is assigned to or something like that. So I started going through it. We also had this idea for data visualization, so it looks like I added that there. By the way, I definitely did not think this design was final at this point, right? So just so you know, got a better eye than that. Started building out some of the areas for the design. And then I thought, I guess like between these two transitions, I thought the color wasn't quite working on the text. Oh, you're missing it. It's cut off, unfortunately. But on the sides, there's a little bit like strip of color now. That's too bad. That's okay, though. I only have one screen, too. So then kept iterating and iterating. Then I thought, one of the things I loved in that commercial was how stark the color felt. And I thought, well, maybe the way they achieved that was by putting that color on such a dark background. So I started playing with that. We got to here, and all of a sudden it was starting to feel right. And what you can't see is there should be little color wedges on the left-hand side there that allow you to correlate the folder between the actual task. Then I thought, well, when you're entering a task, we should allow you to affiliate that with the project that you're looking at. So what if we extend that color down? Then it doesn't feel so stark, too, because I didn't know how I was going to manage that transition, right? Because you have the project tab, and it would feel like it was kind of hanging off, maybe, if it was a stark transition there. So I thought, well, what if we bring that color down? And then I think I tweaked a couple. Yeah, so you can see a little transition there. I just tweaked some of the colors. And this is where we ended up with that design. It's not quite done. There's some other things that we need to do. But I thought that might be interesting for you to see how that process worked for me. So let's review it. I built something. I got some feedback that it wasn't working, right? And I agreed, to be honest. So I started thinking about why it wasn't working, and I realized it needed to be bolder. I needed more color. In my mind, like in the back of my mind, I began this process internally of looking for inspiration, right? Then when I ran into those set of commercials, something about them clicked, and I thought, oh, that must be why. I'm looking for color. I'm looking for people who are being bolder. And then in this kind of weird way, that commercial ended up migrating and becoming something like this. So I thought that would be interesting. Okay. So awesome. Okay. Design attack number 9 is know yourself. And this is the little anecdote that I wanted to share about that. The feedback that I got on that was that the application that I had created. Oh no, actually, let me step back and tell you a different story. When I was working on Seismic at one point, I got some feedback that it's really nice. Somebody said, "Man, I really love it. It's just like XAML." And I thought, oh, well, that's not what I want to hear at all, right? Like, last thing I want to hear is that I've just, one of the bigger opportunities I'll have this year is just like the other thing that I do. So I was sort of upset by that. And then came across this awesome quote. This is from Orson Welles, man who I think followed this principle really well. He says, create your own visual style. Let it be unique for yourself and yet identifiable for others. And this has become something that I think is really, really a powerful concept. And if you think about the designers that you love the most, now I'm not saying I'm there, right? Like my visual style is not where it needs to be. But when you think about the designers that you love, like Frank Chimero or Orson Welles for that matter, or Saul Bass, or Scott Hansen, or I don't know. Think of the designers that you love. They have a distinct style, a style, in fact, that a lot of people might even try to emulate, a style that is their own. And I think that understanding this about yourself, understanding your personal, and this is how I would codify this, understand your personal creative philosophy, push it, allow it to grow, but it's okay if you converge, right? It's okay if you find things that work and they're good, and if you're good, as you become better, that style will become your trademark, and it'll be something that people love about the way that you design. This is true whether you are a professional designer or whether you are a developer trying to be a designer, because the principle is the same. Understand your personal creative philosophy and make decisions because you intend to. Understand why you're making them. Okay, guys, we're down to the last one. With 1 minute and 58 seconds remaining. So I did just fine. That's good, because I was a little worried. Okay, and that is this. Be nice to others. One of the best things that you can do as a designer is you can be nice. And I mean this partially in just kind of the like nice pat on your back as you go home kind of way. But there's also a very practical reason to be nice. And that is that a lot of what you're doing as you are a designer is you are managing your relationships with people. And that happens on 2 levels. So first of all, let's look at this quote. This is from Paula Scher. She's a super well-known designer based out of New York. I think she was with Pentagram. She says, I never knew a designer that got hundreds of thousands of dollars to design a logo. Instead, designers get paid to negotiate the difficult terrain of egos, expectations, tastes, and rationalize those against business needs and the constraints of the marketplace. That's a long quote, and definitely not the right font for that quote because it's so long. But cool, right? The thing that you are doing as a designer is you are helping people to realize their best ideas, and you're managing two relationships, right? You're managing the relationship that you have with your client or whoever is kind of the person that you're producing the design for, as well as the relationship that you have with whoever consumes the design, right? And you're kind of the go-between. You're kind of the medium, you could say, between those two people. And the really successful designers are people who handle that well. And I guess that's the thing, is like, design is something that is just full of ego, and it's really hard to get away from that because it's so subjective. And this is why my previous slide was about like knowing yourself. Design is so subjective, and yet it's trying to be objective, right? Design is very subjective, yet you typically have measurable goals, at least goals of some sort associated with that. And it's a big mess in there if you're not just trying to be nice and all get along. So if you can step out of the way of your ego, just know that people are going to be nice to you and you'll be nice to them. The design process becomes really, really fun. And something that, I started this off by saying it's hard. When I say it's hard, I mean it's hard work. You have to work at it. But it's not hard like it's not fun, because design should be really, really fun. And so that's the last thing I want to share with you, and I'm really grateful for your time today. Go to nerdplusart/MIX10, and I'll put slides up and all that stuff. Fill out the evaluations. Thank you so much. Thanks. And check out Design Toolbox. I did a workshop yesterday, same workshop I did last year. It's up on Design Toolbox, as well as some really cool content. Also, we just should support Microsoft on this. It's such a cool initiative from Microsoft to say, hey, we want to teach you about design. So support them on this, sign up, fall in love with the great content up there. Okay, thank you.